Do you need a Mother's Day card idea? Well, today I'm going to show you a fun and easy card design that you can make without needing any specific stamps or dies. I also have a few tips on how to make your own sentiments by printing them at home, but making them look top quality as if they've been printed on thick cardstock like the ones you buy in the shops. Hi everyone, I'm Steph from Chaos in the Craft Room, and thank you so much for joining me today. So sometimes you have some events that come up and you don't have the perfect stamps for it, or you want to print your own specific sentiment that really works for a specific person. Here I've just typed out Happy Mother's Day on Word and printed them out from my printer at home on really thin printer paper because my printer doesn't like thick paper, and changed the font a few different times and made them a few different font sizes. So I have a range to choose from when I'm creating my cards. And with one I've got a white background and the other I've got a black background depending on what card I want it on. And I also have a few free printables that I've also printed out here. And then also have some thick cardstock. So I generally like using 200 to 300 GSM thick cardstock in black or white depending on your preference. And I chop the sentiments down into more manageable size pieces. And then for the glue, I either use white gesso or Mod Podge. And if you don't have any of them, you can also use a glue stick. But my preference is the others as I find they stick a little bit stronger to the paper. I have a thick brush to ensure that I have quite a thin application or coat when I add it onto the thick cardstock. And then before it dries, I quickly attach and stick on the printed sentiments that I've printed from my computer. And you want to make sure that wherever the sentiments are, you really do have a lot of gesso or glue behind that section. Keep in mind though, if you are using a white gesso, don't wipe the gesso over the sentiments because it will be white and you will see it. So if you do get any on your hands, make sure you wipe that off. I usually work from one corner to another, and that's just to ensure that I don't get any bubbles or wrinkles in the paper when I'm sticking it down, as obviously that wouldn't be the nicest look on our sentiment. So that's why I usually start in one area and then work my way around. If you do want to use any die cuts to cut out the sentiments, make sure you also leave enough of a gap around where the sentiment is on your printed bit of paper. And then I just put that aside to dry. I don't find it normally takes too long. I usually just give it half an hour while I'm doing another task and then come back to it. So now we've got the next step of making the card, now that we've got our sentiments sorted. So this cute little paper, we've got wrapping the flowers as if you bought a bouquet of flowers. And these flowers I've made using my homemade mica spray. If you're interested in how to make them, I'll attach a link there for you. And then I've got a few splatters in the background there. So first, for the paper that's wrapping around the flowers, I'm just using old dictionary paper that I've coffee dyed, and I'm just going to cut a strip of that, and then I'm going to fold it. So first we fold the edge of the corner in to get the bottom point that we want of the paper. So we get sort of a little point at the bottom. And how far across you come will really depend on how wide you want that paper to be for your bouquet of flowers. So you can just play around with what sort of size you're after. And then you fold it over again, making sure that this time you really get a nice point at the bottom. So you've got like a V shape. And it doesn't matter that you have that extra little flap there of paper, we can trim that down. Just make sure the tip is a really nice sort of point. And then I press that down, and then we can trim off the excess. Now, I quite like different sort of looks around when you wrap flowers. Obviously, it's not going to look the same every time. So sometimes I leave a bit of that paper up at the back, or sometimes I trim that down or have different shapes. You can cut it all off altogether. It doesn't matter. I'll show you a few different variations of how I do that. Then, of course, we need to glue down that one side. But first, since we've got some extra paper there, I'm going to go and fold another one while we're going. And then I can stick them all down together. And you can see here all the different variations of the way you've got the paper up the top look great. I don't think I have a preference really. You can trim it however you want or leave it as is. And then I just wanted to add a bit of a brown ink around the edges to give it a bit more of an old paper sort of look to it. I also find this looks really nice with some beautiful pattern paper as well, or even something glittery or vellum. Everything really works, but today I'm going for my more vintage look. Now, my preference to sticking them down, especially because this is quite thin paper, I just use some double-sided tape and strip down and stick down the edge, but really you can use whatever you prefer. And now the next step is to prepare the flowers. So really for these you can use any dies you already have, and you might have some flowers and leaves that are separate dies or together like this one. Doesn't matter. What I've done here is I've cut this all out in green paper, and then I've cut some separate ones out from more pink paper, and I'm just trimming off the areas where the actual flowers are and I'm going to glue it on top. So just to get a bit of colour for my flower components on these dies. However, there's lots of different ways that you can do this. I also have die cut some of these flowers in white paper, and then I've got numerous ways that I like colouring them in, and that's either with watercolour paper or using my alcohol inks, and I'll show you how both of those turn out. So this one here is using my watercolours, and I just love the way this looks because it has lots of different shades of the one colour. And of course, if you don't want the colour of the flowers to blend in with the green colours of the stem, then just make sure the watercolour dries between those colours. But I find if they merge a little bit, it doesn't really matter. I sort of like that watercolour look. And they do get a little bit tangled, these flowers. And then these are the ones I've coloured in using my alcohol-based markers. So hopefully you can see that there, and it's not too blurry, but I love the way these turn out as well. So 3 great ways to colour in the flowers, and at the end of my video I'll also show you how I've created a card using separate flower and die cuts. Now we have the fun of arranging the flowers in the paper, and I sort of was feeling like I was a bit of a florist when I was doing this, you know, arranging them in different ways. Now I've kept each of my flowers of the same colour together, but of course you can mix and match them so it looks like a really colourful bunch of flowers as well. And then the next step of the process, I'm just going to emboss some paper for a background. Now I really like the contrast of these flowers and the way it looks on the black background, but I'll also show you an example using the white paper as well. And of course, just use whichever embossing folders you already have. And now I've just trimmed all the sentiments that we made earlier on in this video, and you can just see, look how sturdy that is. It looks like it's a bought sentiment, but I really just printed it from my printer on simple printer paper, but they ended up looking fantastic. And my cat Ollie even came for this step of the process to see what was going on. And there were some that I left a bit more of a gap around the edges so I could do some die cutting and get some different shapes for those sentiments as well, which was fun. And then for the black sentiments, they turned out really well. The only thing is, if I was to put this on a black card, then you do see that little bit of white paper, that strip between. So I have a simple solution for that. You can either stick it onto thicker black cardstock to begin with, and then you don't even have the problem. But I simply just go around the edges with some black ink, and then I find you can't even see that once you put that on the card. There's not that stark, shiny white showing through. It doesn't even have to be much or perfectly ink blended. The other option you have is you can use a Sharpie and go around the edges, and I find that works really well as well. Okay, and then I just assemble these cards, and these are my final cards. So I just did some splatters in the background before sticking down the flowers, and I just used some watered down acrylic white paint and also stuck on some love hearts as well. And I love how all these cards turned out. I'm not sure which one's my favorite. Let me know which color flower card is your favorite. If you like this video, I'd absolutely love your support to hit the like and subscribe button if you want to see future videos. But I think my favorites, probably this one, more just with the way it ended up looking. I like the way I colored in all the flowers, but this one is one of my favorites with the little ribbon around the paper as well. And this is an example of using the white background and just using separate leaf and flower dies, and then some rhinestones I've popped in the center there as well, and got to use a black sentiment strip. Thank you so much for watching today. I hope you all have a happy Mother's Day, pets included, and I'll see you next time.